Good evening. Thanks everyone for coming out tonight on this lovely night. I probably wouldn't be here unless I had It is a beautiful night here in Chautauqua County. First of all, obviously you've seen the firefighters come in with more chairs, the flag. We want to thank them for hosting us tonight.
Yeah, thank you.
Truly appreciative of that. I'm Allison Hunt. I am Georgia's Chief of Staff. We have Lisa Vanstrom from our office back there. I'm sure a lot of you have met or know Lisa. Just a couple of housekeeping measures. We like to remind people, obviously we're going to get into a lot of policy conversation tonight. I'm sure many of you have questions. There are question sheets going around just in case we don't have the opportunity to get to everybody's question tonight. We do those with good-sized groups just in case we run out of time. So if you want to write your question down, there are sheets going around. Lisa probably has some more and she's also collecting them. And then I'd also like to remind people, one of the other services that we do provide are constituent services. So if anybody is having a problem with a government agency, I'm sure from time to time you might have a problem with a government agency, please feel free to reach out to our office. We obviously are a state office. However, if you're not sure which branch of government it would be, if you don't know if it's federal, state, or local, we will get you connected to the right people. So even if it doesn't go through our level of government, we'll make sure we get you connected with the right level and try to address your concerns. So we're going to have George do a little opening, but that's about it from me.
All right, thanks.
By the way, usually we don't have two microphones, so we do have an audience mic tonight that I will be passing around once we get to some question time.
We want to start with the pledge to the flag. So if you're able to stand, please stand. And I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. So thank you all for coming. I mean, when you say it's October 22nd and it's like 75 degrees outside, I'm just very happy to see a group of people here. Thank you for coming out, because I'm sure you were thinking of a million other places you'd rather be as one of the waning days of the nice days that we're going to have here. So tonight's really special for me because, for those of you that don't know, I grew up here in Fredonia, went to school, kindergarten, graduated in 1985, a million years ago, from Fredonia, and still have a lot of friends and family here. I graduated, my class, 1985, also included former Mayor Doug Essick and his wife Julie, and several people that, Mark Madem from DFT Communications was our class president. So it's good to be back here. My grandfather had a farm up off of Chestnut Street here, had 40 acres of grapes, animals. He worked at the steel plant. My uncle was the head of FSA at Fredonia State for many, many years, Chuck Notaro. I don't know if anybody knows that name. He's been retired for a while now. So it's good to be back here. And even talking, Mark, who's here from Albany, is a SUNY Fredonia graduate and is looking forward to going to BJ's for Wings after, like he did 40 years ago. So some things don't change here in Fredonia, and that's a good thing. So again, great to be back. I'm very proud to represent you in the New York State Senate. This is my 5th year now. I won a special election back in 2019, took office really in 2020. So, it was oh, and look, the mayor's here. I don't want to embarrass you. Look at here. All right. Mike Ferguson, thank you very much for coming, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate you being here. Yeah, absolutely. So, so it's been an interesting term going from a county legislator to county executive for only a couple years, and then to the state senate, and kind of seeing the inner workings of Albany and what is going on there. It is a difficult challenge oftentimes to be that voice for our rural communities, for agriculture, for the things that I think we hold dear, the reasons that we continue to stay here, live here, want to be here, and that's what we really try to stress. And it oftentimes breaks down to, partisan politics, but really it's about, our rural lifestyle here and the things that we value versus, oftentimes what comes out of New York City that is really, more often than not, does not match up with what we believe and value here. So that's the battle that we really fight. It just unfortunately oftentimes breaks down to Democrat versus Republican. But I will tell you that before I talk about some of the other things that are currently going on, I do pride myself in trying to do my best to reach across the aisle. And one of the biggest things that I'm very proud of was something called the Nourish New York program, which came out of the pandemic, when you had farmers that were dumping milk and letting crops rot in their field. Meanwhile, you had food banks across the state that were running out of food for people, and people suffered from food insecurity. So I worked with someone who I met on a farm tour upstate. Her name's Catalina Cruz, a New York City Democrat from Queens who had a makeshift food bank that ran out of food every single day. People left that waited in line and could not get food. And so we worked together to make what was a temporary program into a permanent recurring program that I'm very proud now. It has $50 million in funding from the state. It helps thousands and thousands of farmers across New York State to make sure that they don't have to have surplus food while people go hungry, literally, in other parts of the state. So it's a good program. There's other examples like that. Of course, the partisan stuff is what gets all the attention and the headlines. Hey, welcome. And that's kind of the where we are now, because we're in election year right now. So it's we are and we're steeped into a presidential election, which kind of is over the top of everything else that's going on. And so it's often tough for us to get the message out about what's important here when you're dealing with presidential politics and Congress, and the path to the majority for Republicans goes through New York, and all these things that you all read about, see on TV. Those are the things that kind of overshadow the issues that we have to deal with here. But there are some realities that we have to talk about. The first and foremost is that right now, according to polls, including Siena, who I think most people would consider a respectable polling group, most New Yorkers feel that the state is headed in the wrong direction. Most New Yorkers feel that they don't feel safe in New York anymore. People in New York City don't feel safe, which is interesting. Kathy Hochul has the highest unfavorable ratings at 54%, and the reality is it's for a Western New Yorker, it's really a rarity, right? We have a Western New Yorker as our governor. That hasn't happened in more than a century. And the fact that she has, her approval ratings are so low, that doesn't bode well for the next governor to come from anywhere in upstate New York, particularly New York or for Western New York. Outmigration. New York State leads the nation in people leaving the state. So those are issues that we have to deal with. It's not opinion; those are facts. New York City is really suffering right now from a lot of bad policies. The most recent statistic I saw, 75% of crimes committed in Midtown Manhattan are illegal immigrants. 75%. That's a staggering number. I've been in Midtown Manhattan recently, like last week, and it's kind of a scary place now. It didn't used to be. It's not something that I think anybody should want. And we have to start looking at the cause and effect of these things. I'm, very vocal on the fact that New York State and New York City needs to end its sanctuary policy. Okay, it's absolutely. Yeah. And particularly at the state level. At the state level, it's probably the most egregious because we are a sanctuary state because of Andrew Cuomo signing an executive order in 2017. That means that with the stroke of a pen, Kathy Hochul could undo that, and she's chosen not to. But yet we're spending billions, with a B, billions and billions of taxpayer dollars for what they are referencing as a humanitarian crisis. But we will not turn off that spigot. We will not roll up that welcome mat, which she could do with the stroke of her pen. Now, in New York City, sanctuary was done by the city council. They made it a law. Not an executive order. However, when I had the opportunity to ask Mayor Adams, when he was coming what we call Tin Cup Day. Tin Cup Day is when the mayors of the big cities come to Albany, shaking their tin cup, asking for money. That's why they call it Tin Cup Day. And I had the chance to say, I understand that you're dealing with an open border and that people are coming across the border and they're ending up in New York. But don't you think that we should maybe roll up that welcome mat and end the sanctuary policy? And his response was, oh no, we should continue to be a sanctuary city. So I had a hard time having sympathy for someone that's coming and saying the taxpayers of New York State should be giving him an extra $5 billion. That's what he was asking for. We gave him $2.4 billion, about half of what he was asking for. And yet, when we asked for an increase in our roads and bridge funding from the state, the answer was, sorry, we don't have the money. We kept it flat this year. Now, everybody knows the cost of paving roads, repairing bridges has gone up dramatically. Inflation, the cost of goods, labor. But the answer was in the budget, sorry, we can't. That means less miles of road being repaired and paved. That means less bridges being taken care of. That means less money for extreme winter recovery because of inflation. But we had another $2.4 billion to send to New York City. And they couldn't even do the courtesy of shutting off that spigot known as sanctuary. So what is a sanctuary policy? Because it sounds great, right? We're a sanctuary. It sounds great. What is sanctuary policy? It's very simple. Sanctuary means that law enforcement officials are prohibited by law from cooperating with federal immigration officials when they arrest someone who has committed a crime who is not a citizen. That's all it is. If you are convicted of that crime, you are still prohibited from cooperating with federal immigration officials. That's what sanctuary is. And I have a problem with that. Okay, we also decreased by 1 day the criminal penalty for misdemeanors. If it's 1 year or more, they can then cooperate. In other words, if you commit a crime that carries a penalty and you're convicted of a penalty that carries 1 year or more, then they can cooperate. So we changed the misdemeanors from 1 year to 364 days by 1 day, so that all those people that have been convicted of crimes that carry a penalty of 1 year no longer are eligible to be deported. So when you think about the immigration crisis, the migrant crisis, once you leave the border states, Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, the so-called migrant crisis is almost exclusively in sanctuary cities and states. It is. It's New York, it's Chicago, it's places that have declared themselves sanctuary. So when you say, well, there's no relation between, which is what the mayor said, there's no relation between our migrant policy, or our sanctuary policy and the migrant crisis, but there is. There is. And you have hundreds of thousands of people that have come to New York that cannot work, that we have no idea what the background is. Say, well, they've been given some legal status. I don't buy that. If you don't know someone's background, how can you afford them legal status? We had a person who was granted legal status by the United States government from Peru that was wanted in Peru. He's in Endicott, New York, just outside of Binghamton, wanted for 23 murders in Peru. He has legal status here in New York, so I don't buy that. You can't prove By the way, here's the sick thing. He had the tattooed images of his murder victims on his body. That's like something sick that you see in a movie. He's here, legally. So I don't buy that excuse. I bring this up not to be divisive, but to say we have to do something about this. That when we cannot provide services like infrastructure repair, like, things for our seniors, our veterans. When you break it down as to how much money New York City and New York State combined are spending on the so-called migrant crisis, it works out to about $25 million a day. We give for veteran services here in New York State $14 million a year. So before lunchtime in New York State every day, we spend more on the migrant crisis than we spend on veterans for an entire year. I have a problem with that. Most people should have a problem with that. So we have to have some sanity and some common sense restored. So I'm not going to go any more than that, because I know Allison's looking at me like, time to take questions. All right. All right, so we will take some questions now. All right, great.
Again, there's question sheets, but that doesn't mean we can't have an open dialogue as well.
Yeah.
But we are going to, speaking of what you were literally just talking about, Mary says she works at a local food pantry, and it breaks my heart when I see veterans come in, young ones who just got out of the military, telling me they have nothing, no food, same, no shelter. What they say is heartbreaking. and they're concerned that the illegals are getting everything. What is the plan for this? Is there going to be a solution?
So, you know, I think first and foremost, when you're talking about food security, I talked about Nourish New York. Both myself and Catalina Cruz and a bipartisan group of people, including the chair of the Agriculture Committee of the Senate, Michelle Hinchy, who's a Democrat, the chair of the Assembly Agriculture Committee, Nana Lupardo, who's a Democrat, Chris Tague, the ranking member of the Assembly Agriculture Committee, who's a Republican, and myself. We're working together to try to address the issue of how do we free up more money. Because unfortunately, the bureaucracy has really hindered the Nourish New York program. It used to be really, really easy. And everybody that applied essentially got the money, including Rural Ministries here in Dunkirk, who lost that funding, unfortunately, because of the way that they changed this. So they changed it from being overseen by Ag and Markets, the Agricultural and Markets Commission, which the farm people, do you think they should probably oversee the food stuff? The farm people, probably a good idea. They changed it to the Department of Health, which, ladies and gentlemen, there is no worse bureaucracy in Albany than the Department of Health. I mean, if you get them to answer a phone, play the lottery that day, because you've obviously beaten the odds if you've gotten someone to pick up the phone at the Department of Health. So when they switched it to the Department of Health, a lot of people lost out. They also convoluted programs, so people, through a portal, were essentially applying for money. And I'm bringing all this up to answer the question that it's not the funding, it's the bureaucracy around the funding that has created problems where we can't get food to, veterans in need and people that really, I mean, most people, if you speak to like the folks at Rural Ministries, they'll tell you it's not a lot of quote unquote regulars. These are people that try really hard and then just sometimes they need a little extra help. And those are the people that we should really be helping, right? Because they want to. They're not looking for a permanent handout. They're looking for something to help close that gap. And that's where the Nourish New York program was so important, that it was nimble and it was able to be deployed quickly and easily without a lot of red tape. So we are working hard in a bipartisan way to return that program, hopefully to Ag and Markets, where it can be nimble once again. So that's the answer to the question.
Along the same line, talking again about the illegal immigrants, concern about them being here in Chautauqua County. PJ Wendell said no to legal immigrants in the county. What about Dunkirk, Jamestown?
So we thought about.
We are seeing an influx in our hotels, private homes. And this is from Tammy. I don't know if you want to expand on where in particular you're seeing this, but.
All right. So, despite that.
Tammy, are you Tammy? Do you want to expand on this just a little bit?
So should I? Or okay.
Don't.
Do you want?
Now she's pointing fingers. All right.
Okay. All right.
So.
I have a friend.
Okay. That's how every story starts. Asking for a friend.
Who has a friend who has a friend who saw a coach bus pull up in front of a house in Dunkirk by the Quick Fill on Central, and with a license plate Texas, with 51 between 20 and 40-year-old men.
Here in the area. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, so you saw that too?
Yeah. Yes.
So
I don't want to say your name out loud just in case. That's right.
So we have 26 employees that came from Mexico. They are fully vetted. They are our H-2A employees. Every single one of them is vetted. We have 4 houses that we own in Dunkirk.
Yeah.
And we house them in all those different houses. We take them shopping. They work for us 6 days a week. They are not here illegally.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm glad you said it, because that was going to be one of my possible answers, to be honest with you. So let me talk briefly about the H-2A program. The H-2A program is the way really things should be done. And there's a couple different federal programs. H-2A is basically designed around seasonal employees. These are folks that come from other countries, Mexico, Central America. They come here legally, they're vetted. There's a very rigorous process for the farmers when it comes to housing, everything else, incredibly rigorous process. It is a difficult program. And I know a lot of farmers that participate in that program, in my district especially. So, when you were a kid, who worked on a farm when you were a kid, right? Okay. How many kids work on farms now? Okay, so you need seasonal employees. You need seasonal employees to come up from other countries, and they are vetted, as was mentioned, and they are here, and quite honestly, they're here to make money and go home, and then go home for a few months and come back. And in some cases, I met H-2A workers that have been coming to the same farm for 10, 20, 30 years, the same people. They become like family to a lot of these farmers. And so that's the way I think the program should function, and is functioning, quite frankly. Could it be expanded? Absolutely. But it's a very strict process that has paid off well. And I've heard great stories about some of these workers that go back to the communities, live in very poor communities. And they have been able to do things like build infrastructure with the money that they make here, put in water lines, and I mean, like real stuff to help their community. So it's good to hear these stories, and I think it's important to point out that these are folks that want to go back to their home country. They come here to work as much as possible, and one of the things we've done, unfortunately, in Albany to hinder that is the overtime rules that were put in place. This has been and it was done under the guise of we're going to help these laborers. It did not help the laborers. By the way, they couldn't actually produce one single laborer, H-2A participant, or anyone else that actually wanted this. And what has happened is they've chased a lot of these workers to other states where they can make more money because they don't have these overtime restrictions that they have here. So, and also, New York State is the only state east of the Mississippi River that has these type of overtime rules. And what do we have here? A real short season. That's what we have here. It snows here. So I know we kind of off on a tangent on the original question, but I think it's important that we talk about that because, we do have people in our community that are here legally vetted, they're here to work hard and want to provide for their families back home. And to me, that's the best possible scenario because there are just a lot of people who just aren't going to work on a farm anymore, unfortunately. Yeah. They pay payroll taxes just like everybody else. Yeah, absolutely, they pay payroll taxes. So, all right.
We're going to move on to another topic.
Okay.
SUNY Fredonia. Largest employer in Chicago County has been dealing with a deficit of $17 million. As quoted in the paper. Is there anything you can do to help with this problem, work with the governor, trustees, and what have you done?
Yeah, and I've actually, I can tell you that President Colson and I have had many conversations. SUNY Fredonia is an important asset here. I mean, growing up here, like I said, my uncle worked there for, 30 plus years. It's an important part of this community. The simple solution is, we'll just cover the deficit with the state money, and that, I think it's a temporary solution to provide for more funding would be great, but you have to have a plan. And I know that this year enrollment is up, which is good, so it's going in the right direction. One of the biggest problems I see with all the SUNY campuses that are suffering right now is, again, the bureaucracy of SUNY to be able to do things like change programs. If it were up to me, I wouldn't want to be, as a business owner, as someone who has to work hard to distinguish myself from other businesses, from a competition standpoint, I don't want to be doing the same things that every other SUNY campus in the area is doing, because then they're making decisions not based on the quality of the education, but do I like the dorms? Do they have enough food? Do I like the town it's in? If you have programs that are going to attract kids from all over the state for things they can't get elsewhere, that to me is the most successful formula. We don't have it at SUNY Fredonia, and I'm not blaming them because I know how difficult it is to make a change. We don't have like a hospitality and food service program. We don't have an agriculture program. We've, it's always that early, we want to have the high tech, blah, 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 science, blah, blah, blah. I'm sorry, everybody's got that. How about we be something unique that also is going to provide a feeder for the businesses right here, okay? That's one of the problems that we suffer. We don't have, we need to have, I think, more integration between JCC and Fredonia. They're headed down that path, and I applaud both presidents for working together to try to create some kind of synergies between JCC and SUNY Fredonia. You've got healthcare positions that we could, healthcare programming. That to me is the path to saving SUNY Fredonia, is to provide unique programming and even like certificate programs like they have at JCC, which is more difficult at a four-year school, I get that. But providing unique opportunities that will attract students from across the state and across the nation, because it's one of the few areas, or maybe the only area, that you can find it. That is the conversations I've been having. And I think that if they come up with that plan, I will do everything I can to push it through at SUNY as quickly as possible and help provide some, we'll call, bridge funding until those programs can be up and running. Yes, Ms. LaDuca.
I had a conversation recently with a man that had a college, a child that's college age, and he said, I would never send him to Fredonia. There is no hospital nearby.
Yeah, yeah. Well, hopefully that's going to be a solution soon. Well, it is a solution soon. Yeah, it's a, yes.
That's one of the reasons people
Yeah,
don't come.
again, quality of life issues.
Right.
We want to make decisions not so much based on quality of life issues, but based on education issues. And that's where I think we have to distinguish ourselves. But as long as you're up the hospital, that is certainly, the mayor's here, we can talk about that. We put together, talk about an amazing effort by every level of government, local officials, to get that money released. That was sitting around for, almost a decade before it was released. So it's good there. I know that the mayor's working on the infrastructure issues and everything else, but we're excited to have a New Brooks Hospital, and that again will be something to help support the growth at SUNY Fredonia without a doubt. So, okay, next question.
We're going to move on to one that is on the ballot here 2 weeks from today. Jack said, I believe that your position on the Equal Rights Amendment includes illegitimate concerns, and he did ask to speak on Jack. Where are you?
Illegitimate concerns. Legitimate concerns.
I'm gonna give you the mic and give you an opportunity so George can respond.
Sure.
He's very well versed on this. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see you've listed a number of concerns with the Equal Rights Amendment, and I'd just like to respond to a couple of them.
Would you like to ask me a question and I can answer what is your concern?
Sure. You're saying that among the concerns are that constitutional rights in the document would open the door to voting and other rights for non-citizens.
Okay. Would you like me to respond to that?
Yeah. And then
Okay. All right.
if
There
I
you go.
could respond to your response.
Okay. Sure. So here's the issue with Prop 1, also known as the Equal Rights Amendment. It is incredibly broad. There are no guardrails. There are no safety stops, so to speak. First and foremost, everything that they claim that they're going to protect is already protected in New York State. One of the big buzzwords is we're going to codify abortion in the Constitution. Because, and I heard this from Liz Kruger, I like very much Liz, but she said in a forum that I was also quoted in a news story that, well, if Republicans ever get control, they're going to just ban abortion. Okay. Abortion has been legal in New York State since 1970, 3 years before Roe versus Wade. In that time, you've had Republican governors, and for most of those 54 years, Republicans have controlled the New York State Senate. Almost all of that time, except for 10 years. So that's a false narrative. That's a false narrative. So by opening the floodgates of this Pandora's box to do what is essentially, in my opinion, fear-mongering, you're going to create a lot of new problems. So let's talk about potential rights for non-citizens, which encompasses illegal immigrants, green card holders, people that have some kind of special status, anybody that's not a citizen of the United States. The language says you cannot discriminate someone based on national origin. Sounds nice. Sounds like we don't want to discriminate against someone that's from somewhere else. But what it means, and the interpretation that I've gotten, by the way, PolitiFact, which is not a conservative organization, did back that up. My concerns up recently, is that when you say you cannot discriminate someone based on national origin. That means that if they are not a citizen, they still cannot be discriminated against, which means they are entitled to the rights and privileges of a citizen. That can include voting. Now you might say, well, that'll never happen. Yes, it will happen. New York City, 2 years ago, the city council passed a law to give non-citizens the right to vote in New York City elections. They passed a law, and the mayor signed it. It was overturned because of a lawsuit. However, if we change it was overturned for being unconstitutional. However, if we change the Constitution of New York State to say that you cannot discriminate someone based on national origin, then they will have a constitutional right to that. And there will be many, many organizations that will bring lawsuits to do just that. So that's my concern, and there are many constitutional experts that agree with me. In fact, I can't find any that disagree with me. They kind of just say, well, that'll just never happen. That's the answer. Yes?
Just so everybody's aware, we also live stream these, so that's part of
That's
it.
why we have to have the microphone.
So my response is there is a statement from the New York City Bar Association saying that this will not impact change in qualifications for voting.
Why?
A separate part of the state constitution governs qualifications for voting based on citizenship status. Proposition 1 does not enfranchise any new classes of voters.
See, that's wrong. So what I've been told is what you're going to do, have battling classes. Someone's going to say that this part of the Constitution now overrides that other part of the Constitution, and absolutely will be the case. So yeah, and I understand the New York City Bar Association, they disagree with a lot of stuff that we say, but the reality is you are changing the Constitution. And by the way, there's something called Part B that is even more egregious. It basically says everything we said in Part A, forget about. We're going to legalize, essentially, the government discriminating against people to undo past discrimination. So that opens up, again, another Pandora's box. So absolutely, you can and will see lawsuits brought on behalf of people that are non-citizens to vote if we add this very broad, very vague language to the Constitution. Anybody else? Yes?
All right, we'll do one more response from you, sir, and then we're going to move on to the next question.
Also, you bring up the issue about parents
Yes.
and
Parental rights.
parental rights.
Yeah.
So, again, there's a statement here. Let me find it. Hang on. Saying that parents will still have, hold this for just a second, will still have the necessary rights regarding their children. They say that it does not address parental rights, which are governed by other developed areas of the state and federal law. It does not change existing law with respect to parental consent or parents' ability to be involved in decision-making about health care or medical procedures for their minor children, including gender-affirming care.
Yeah, see, that's a problem because we have cases right now. In fact, I was just at a press conference on Friday with a gentleman who spent $150,000 in 7 years to essentially restore his parental rights as a father because he had a son who was, without his knowledge, being transitioned in his school district, the Kenton School District right here in Western New York. He spent 7 years fighting this because the school started saying, essentially saying that they were going to transition this child, that he's be taking hormone blockers because the mother wanted this to be done. He lost his parental rights, first and foremost. Okay? 7 years, $150,000. He was able to rescue his son, but there's others that have not been so lucky. So if you change the Constitution to say that you cannot discriminate someone based on age, and that's all it says, you cannot discriminate someone based on age. Sounds nice. Sounds like we mean that I don't want somebody who's 65 years old to get fired from their job because of their age. But what it actually does is there's no, because again, there's no guardrails, there's no limits, is it says that a child can now be essentially making their own medical decisions. And if a 5-year-old boy walks into school and says to his teacher, I think I'm a girl, that teacher, if they choose to get quote-unquote gender-affirming care, is protected by the New York State Constitution if we pass Prop 1. So that's the issue here. It also is a question as to whether or not, what do we do about things like pedophilia? A 35-year-old is quote-unquote dating a 14-year-old, okay? Now, you might say, oh gosh, we have laws against that. There will be a defense attorney and a judge that will say, I'm sorry, because of the New York State Constitution, he has a constitutionally protected right to do that. Now, that'll never happen, okay? Everybody knows Harvey Weinstein, convicted rapist. The highest court in New York State, the Court of Appeals, just overturned his rape conviction because his rights were violated. There are cases in every county across this state, and I know Andrew Molitor is here, who's our first assistant district attorney here in Chautauqua County. There are cases right now where there are pedophiles that are being prosecuted. They will now have a defense attorney, a public defender that will have a brand new constitutional right to bring up to create reasonable doubt, to create a defense, because you cannot discriminate against someone based on age. And again, these are not hypotheticals in the sense that we already are seeing this out there. So why would you open this Pandora's box when you don't need to? That's my question to you. Why would you open that Pandora's box? Even if you don't believe these things are true, when these are already protected rights. There's nothing that's going to happen to abortion. So why would you open this Pandora's box? If you don't believe it's a Pandora's box, then why wouldn't they put some guardrails in place? Whether it's intentional or unintentional, it is a bad, bad piece of legislation, the worst I've ever seen in my life, and we should vote no on Prop 1. Okay.
Joe wants to talk about, it seems like you spent a lot of time on agriculture, and rightfully so. And commend you for doing that. Also a great deal of time supporting the prison guards, which again, I commend you for, but why don't you sink your energy into education system where spending is through the roof, combining schools, shared services. And Joe, you said you wanted to elaborate on this just a little bit?
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems to me right now, hi,
Hey.
George. You know, Dunkirk and Fredonia are going through some major, I want to say expansions, but improvements to their facilities. And it just seems asinine to me that you got one place spending, I don't know what it is, $20 million in Fredonia for the sports complex. Dunkirk's going to spend another $15 million. They're a mile and a half probably as the crow flies. We have Fredonia State in the middle. And we're not doing anything about this. And I think that's something we should be sinking our teeth into. Like I said, agriculture, absolutely. The prison guards, absolutely. But this is something that benefits every homeowner in the state, the school, the education system. And I think and I haven't heard anything about that, about doing something, changing the dynamic of that. Because it's ridiculous to be spending this kind of money when you could have shared services. So that's I wanted to ask you what you think about that.
Yeah, well, here's what I would say. I've always been a big proponent of local control. And the state coming in and mandating things, I'm not a big fan of. But in this case, this is truly about local control. You have local school districts, local boards of education that are people that are elected that can make those decisions. And we've seen good results. You've seen, sports teams being shared. You're seeing all the things that we do to keep, sports alive that otherwise you wouldn't have enough participants in. So you have, my God, how many different, schools involved, like in a swim team now? You've got, so it can be done when they want for it to be done. But yet, whenever you have votes to merge schools, they fail almost 100% of the time. And it's happened here. It's because the people that are complaining about their taxes being too high are also voting no on consolidations and mergers. My predecessor, Kathy Young, was big on regional high school in this area. And she was in the majority. She was chair of the finance committee. She was one of the most powerful people in Albany at the time. And even she couldn't get it done. Because it's a local issue that's blocked, honestly, blocked or supported. I'm not telling you that it's good or bad. I'm just saying that at the end of the day, it's truly one of the few things left that the state hasn't been able to mandate because the people locally, we've all heard stories about school mergers. My God, if we merge with that school, we're going to take on all their debt. My goodness, all these falsehoods that are out there. What the state could do a better job of, honestly, is providing more support and education and incentive for those things. You know, when I was a county legislator and county executive, we had a crisis in Forestville. At the end of the day, you know, Forestville, I'm not going to go into all the details now, but Forestville ended up dissolving their village government. And I didn't go in there as a county legislator saying, you need to do this. I didn't say, we just provided the facts and support. We went to the state, happened to have an entire department, Department of State, that had resources. So the people could, they had votes, they had 2 votes, and both times they voted to dissolve the village. But it was their decision to do so because they saw this as a way to save money, to restore some, you know, confidence, or whatever you want to say, in local government. In the end, the people of the village of Forestville, they now have this great organization called Imagine Forestville. It's a great organization. And they still do all the things that locally that made their village unique, but it's not a village anymore. So I bring that up because when the state provides the incentive and the education, I'm hoping that the people locally can make those decisions. And instead of going on rumor and falsehoods, that we actually have facts to work with. So I'm all about that, and I'm happy to push that. But at the end of the day, when was the last time a school merger vote passed? I know, I mean, in the last 25 years. You've got, well, the only one I can think of is Chautauqua, yeah, exactly. That was what, 30 years ago now? Something like that? Since then, we've had many, many votes. Yes, and and they've all been voted down by the people that claim that they want to save money. So that's the issue. There needs to be more education and support.
But George, one point on
Yeah.
that. Fredonia and Brockton were in a potential
Yeah.
merger as well. But Fredonia voted for it.
And Brockton voted
Against
yeah.
it because Brockton gets 70 or 73 or 78% of their budget was provided by the state.
Most rural school districts are better than 50% comes from the state, you know, so,
Fredonia is not.
yeah.
It's less than.
Yeah, I'm saying most rural school districts, at least in my district, so I'm sure Fredonia's not one. But I'm saying that there needs to be will at the local level to do this, you know.
What would be the incentive for a Brockton to
Well,
vote yes when they get what they want?
Yeah, the reality, I mean, again, I don't remember all the details of that, and I wasn't involved, but it was certainly the school district, the school boards, the people that were, you know, proposing. Yeah, there you go. There's another thing. People want to lose their mascot. I hear that all the time. Yeah, so I was a hillbilly, and I want my grandson to be a hillbilly, and I was a hillbilly, and you know, I'm proud of it. But I just think that there's more to it than the state's not going to come in and say you have to merge schools. Quite frankly, if they did do that, you know, I think you'd see a lot of problems. There'd be a lot of pushback. Versus, again, trying to educate people as to why should Brockton vote for that, and here's why. And here's the incentives, and there are incentives there to do it. You know, I mean, I would say Chautauqua Lake. You know, I'm not an expert, but I would call it a success story. They have an amazing STEM program there. You know, kids are working to get into the skilled trades. They've got a beautiful facility there. They've got strong sports teams. They've got everything that they had that the 3 schools, I think it was 3 schools that they merged, had before and more. So there's definitely at least one example we can point to as to why you should do it. But ultimately, it's the local people that need to support that. And there needs to be a pushback against the misinformation. Yes?
How much, I don't know if you know off the top of your head, how much of the state budget goes to education?
A lot of it. Yeah,
That's what I'm
like a
getting
big lot of it. Yeah. So
sometimes, and I know it's not easy, I went to Minzenny, they closed Minzenny,
Yeah.
sure your heart broke. After 5 years, you know, what's the memory, you know? But somebody has to do something to
Yeah,
get
there's-
the costs.
yeah. I mean, you know, look, I will say this about education. You know, first of all, I think that, you know, we have a good public education system overall. We do. You know, I'm a public school kid, and I'm proud of the education that I got here. I think the spending gets out of control. There's a lot of special interests in Albany, and some of the most powerful special interests in Albany are education related, and that has a lot to do with spending. So, you know, of all that money that's spent on education, not all of it's on educating our kids. It's infrastructure, it's you know, I mean, it's all these things, you know?
It's probably the most politically volatile thing to run on, or to not necessarily
Yeah.
run on, but to campaign for too, because there's a lot of personal
No doubt about it. Well, and I'll tell you what, you want to save some money, we have to get rid of this electric school bus mandate that's going to cost our schools a fortune. And let's start with that if you want to save some money. Talk about ridiculous and, and the cost involved and everything else. So, that's what I'm saying. When I said so much of that money that's spent is not on educating our kids. That's a perfect example of what it's going to cost to meet that ridiculous, unnecessary mandate.
Move on to another question. We have a number of topics people did ask about tonight. A topic near and dear to George's heart. Diana said, why didn't we get to vote about the solar panels taking farmland? Why wouldn't they put them up and down the thruway? So about locations and, George is pretty passionate about this one.
That's like a whole, we could do an entire town hall on green energy. Look, I've been vocally opposed to this. We have beautiful, pristine areas here, and they've been industrialized by wind and solar, period. This is not about climate change, folks. This is about money. And the people making money things. I'm just very opposed to it. So why don't we get to vote on it? Well, because, this is the way it's been forced down. That local zoning laws and local planning boards had final say. That all got wiped out by Andrew Cuomo. What they want their quality of life to be. We're just going to burn right through that. We're going to override DC rules, not worry about runoff, not worry about habitat, not worry about anything else, because we have to put this up because it's a crisis. You can really justify a lot of crazy stuff when you define something as an existential threat to humanity, and that's what's going on. And it is absolutely about money. And I have a bill out, which is put out, it's called the Green Energy Anti-Corruption Act, where it's going to set some guidelines. Okay, in the end, first and foremost, if you are a local elected official, you do not get to have a contract for a land agreement for opposed to wind or solar when you're voting on these things, when you're influencing policy, when you're making money off of that. I mean, could you imagine? I mean, any place else, if you found that out? Other thing is, the municipalities right now that are agreeing to these things typically have one attorney. The attorney provided by the wind company or the solar company, paid for by the wind and solar company that's negotiating both sides. Look, folks, I've never been divorced. I hope to never be divorced. But if I were to get divorced, I don't want my wife picking out and paying for my attorney. And that's what's happening right now. So they're getting a lot of bad deals. Also, there's a lot of shady tactics that go on. I'm going to apply the same standards we apply to telemarketers as to wind and solar companies. They cannot badger people. I hear all the time from landowners. They're constantly badgering me. They're constantly calling me. If no is no, if they don't want this. And also, this is an important one, these contracts are so convoluted. They're all redacted. This is all done with public money, folks. If there were no more tax dollars, there would never be another wind or solar project built anywhere in the United States. Because without that money, there's no financial sense to it. They won't do it. So if billions and billions of taxpayer dollars are going to all these wind and solar projects, all of that information should be public record and foilable. So every contract with every municipality, every landowner should be public information because it's all taxpayer dollars. Yeah.
Is there anything set up in escrow to clean up these fields?
Very little, very little. That's another bill that I have. They put money aside, but the reality is it's woefully inadequate. For example, there's never enough money to remove the concrete foundations that they put with wind turbines up for. There's no money, for the remediation of these spent wind turbine blades. It's woefully inadequate. So yeah. Yes.
Well, my question is, and you brought up a lot of great points. How much help do you have?
How much help?
How much help do you have with your fellow senators, whether it be Republican or Democrat?
It depends on the issue and the situation, but we do have a lot of us that get to.
Is it a strong body?
We have I'll say this about at least our Republican conference in the Senate, and I say this because our leader, Rob Wart, is an ex-combat veteran, military veteran, combat veteran, and he'll say that maybe outmanned but never outgunned. So we are always in there fighting hard, no matter how few of us, and we will continue to fight hard, without a doubt.
Move on to the next.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, Mary asked, she's a seasoned poll worker.
Many of my peers are hesitant to be poll workers. School boards are worried about having poll sites at schools. How can we work together to quell the rhetoric about violence or aggression at poll sites?
Sorry. So the question is about violence at poll sites. and
People feeling
schools.
comfortable working at poll sites and schools being comfortable having poll sites at their locations. Basically, the lack of poll workers and
Yeah.
making sure that they're comfortable.
Being a poll worker is a hard thing, you know. My grandmother did it for years, my stepmother does it. She gets mad at me every other year because she can't do it because I'm on the ballot, so now she's not allowed to. So I gotta pay her for that, no, I'm kidding. But, you know, yeah, I would say that, first of all, I'm not aware of any incidents that have occurred anywhere in my district when it comes to violence at poll sites. I'm not sure where that's occurred, but certainly we want to have people that have confidence. I also think it's a long day, if you want to know why we look at poll workers. I mean, and I talked to a guy yesterday, he's going to start at 5 a.m. and go till 10 o'clock at night. That's, and no overtime. How about that? When the government does it, it's okay not to pay overtime, right? So I'm just not aware of any incidents where we've had threats of violence at poll sites.
And the question, the question was, how can we restore confidence? Then also, like, how can we make people just feel more comfortable?
Working at poll sites, yeah. Is that, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah, it's, I mean, you know, we need more people to do it. Typically, for the most part, I would say it's older folks, senior citizens that are retired. So I know that there was a push to pay poll workers more. It was one of our bills. Unfortunately, as typical in Albany, they were going to mandate a higher rate of pay but not actually fund it. So we're going to make our local boards of elections pay the extra cost. But I'm not even sure that, you know, again, I think it's one day's job, and not everybody can afford to do that, you know, to take the day off work. But I'm all in favor of paying more to poll workers, absolutely. But the state has to fund it. You can't just say we're going to pay $100 an hour. That's what they were proposing, $100 an hour, and then have our local boards of elections pay that. So, yeah. Yeah, no, sure. Yeah, you're doing it. Yeah, $100 an hour. I'll take the day off. Yeah, absolutely. I'll do it. Yeah.
Michael, I don't know if you want to expand on this. Increase cell phone coverage into Lake Erie. George lives in Lake
Yes,
Erie.
yes. I don't have a boat, so it'd be difficult for me to swim and talk on the phone in the middle of the lake. But no, actually, that's actually an important point, and I will. So there is a logistical issue with that. Believe it or not, I've actually talked about this with cell phone companies because I am concerned about once you get out to a point in the lake, it's hard to get a signal and emergencies happen. That's why the response I heard was that's why you have to have a marine radio as well. It's important to have a marine radio because you cannot rely on cell phone service. Also, you're competing, once you get out into the middle of Lake Erie, you're competing with Canada. You know, it used to be, I remember, you know, they somehow fixed it, but I remember you could just be on the water's edge and all of a sudden you're paying, you know, roaming fees in Canada because you're picking up a Canadian cell signal. They seem to have fixed that. But the logistical challenge is that the range is only so far for a cell tower. And that you could, you know, satellite communication obviously is a whole different animal, but you know, cell towers work on, or cell phones work on radio signals. And radio signals are limited, and they also have interference. So, yes, the solution I was told when I talked about this last was that's why it's important to have marine radio when you're on the boat. And if you're out swimming in the middle of Lake Erie, first of all, you're a better swimmer than I am because I can never get way the hell out there like that. But if you're out that far, you need more than just a cell phone. So that's for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
But there's another issue anywhere between Route 5
Oh yeah.
and Dunkirk.
Oh yeah, it sucks there. Yeah, I know. I can't. Like no, seriously, if I have to be on a call, like so I travel between Dunkirk and Silver Creek all the time. And if I have to be on a call, I have to take the thruway. I have to go out of my way and go to the thruway because if I take 5, there's like no signal. Again, that is also an issue with the fact that you have to have, you know, that land is expensive land. And building a cell tower that in those locations, again, there's not a lot of, it's cost prohibitive. I wish there was a better answer to that. And again, I've talked to the reps at Verizon about that, you know, and they said, well, you know, we've done tests, and it's not that bad. And I said, well, yeah, it is. And with 5G, it's even worse. Because so we'll have that conversation again, though, because that was a while. That was a couple years ago. So we'll have that conversation again about what we can do to improve that along Route 5. Because yeah, once you leave like the town of Dunkirk and you hit Sheridan all the way down Route 5 until you get to St. Columban's, there's like no signal. Yeah, trust me, I'm well aware.
Weeks ago, the EMTs were at my house, and they had to get in touch with the emergency or the hospital.
Yeah.
And had
Yeah.
They said, we can't get through, we have
Yeah.
they thought it was their phones. I said, coverage in this area, we have to use my landline to get through the work that we're trying to.
Yeah, that's definitely an issue, and, yeah, we should definitely, be a good conversation to pick up. Yeah, we'll pick up that conversation again. We haven't bothered them on that in a while, so.
George likes to bother people.
I do, that's right.
So he's pretty good.
That's right. You're good at it too, though.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
We have a good team of bothering.
Yeah, we know to get,
Independent businesses.
that's right, now they get under somebody's skin, so,
Next topic. George asked, not this George, another George, asked, what is the latest news about Article 5 Convention of States?
Yeah, I haven't heard much on the Convention of States lately. You know, we have had outreach on Convention of States. You know, it's an issue that I can tell you that my colleagues in the majority are not at all thrilled about, and they would need to, as far as New York participating, it would have to be a legislative. My understanding is it has to be a legislative. It has to be passed legislatively, and you know they're not in favor of a Convention of States. So a Convention of States is, you know, states that get together and, you know, can, you know, make obviously changes, major changes. Yes, yeah, and there's no doubt there's a federal issue there as well, but each state, you know, the Convention of States is something that hasn't happened in a long time, and I know there's been people that have been doing it for, yes, yes, but I will tell you that I don't think that the folks in the majority in New York State have any interest in participating in Convention of States. That's at least what my understanding is. So, yeah, I know.
By the way, I am an inspector.
Thank you for doing that. Appreciate it. I'll try and get you $100 off if I can.
We do have one that's a little more of a constituent services related to a star check. They can certainly elaborate, but I believe Al or Madeline, I don't know if you want to elaborate. Oh, sorry. Or if you would just like to continue to work with our team, it's completely up to you. But did you want to elaborate to the senator on the issue? I know you're working with our office as well already, but. Oh, I thought she was. I apologize. Oh. Would you like to speak?
How many seniors in this room have not received their star check?
What?
Star rebate check.
Yeah, all they always do is vague answers,
Yes,
sometime in
I-
October, so.
Rebate check. Okay. And this,
Yeah,
I don't own a home anymore, so I don't know about that. I have got it.
yeah. You know, and I'll say this, I have an issue with them having to issue a check. Just put a credit on the bill. Why does Kathy Hope have to sign her name, so if you get a check in the mail, you gotta take just give a credit, it used to be a credit. You know, I don't think you need to have to issue a check.
can I ask why this year? Can I ask everybody why this year? We've lived here, this is our third year. Last 2 years, no problem. Are we supporting the illegal aliens over the seniors in Chautauqua County?
The rhetorical question, that's what they call that, so yeah. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I'm actually out of written questions. Did anybody have anything that they didn't get a chance to write down? We are almost out of time, but I will definitely take one more if somebody had something they wanted
And
to
a
ask.
Halloween shirt in the back, that'd be good.
Farms stand up the street. We have a farm stand up the street, and we get robbed every once in a while with stuff, but we don't feel necessary to call the police with that. Are they really thinking that crime numbers are down? Seriously?
Yeah, I think you bring up an important point that a lot of crime is not reported. Also, New York State is not really cooperating with FBI when it comes to reporting crime statistics. So, yeah, the question is really when crime is down. First of all, crime is not down. Right now, crime, New York State, statewide, so 2019 is when the so-called criminal justice reforms were passed. It took place in 2020, January 2020. So you have to compare from 2019, before you had bail reform, discovery reform, you know, less is more, all that stuff. And the reality is, crime is up statewide 25%. It's bad. In New York City, it's up 33%, so it's even worse. Now, granted, the government will say, well, you know, gun crime is down to an all-time low. I question that, number one. Number two, most crime is not committed with a gun. Most crime, the vast majority of crimes in New York State are not committed with a gun. So that's a false narrative, because gun crime is done, crime is done, it's not. I absolutely have an issue with that. But here's the thing. People don't feel safe. That is what has to be addressed. People don't feel safe. When they hear stories and see people, illegal immigrants being released, getting the bird on their way out the door, that doesn't help things. So we need to address those issues because it's the perception. Even if you don't believe the reality, the perception is that crime is rampant. And we have people that are no longer held accountable for their actions. And so, like you said, if you own a farm stand and somebody steals some fruit and it's not a lot of money, you're not going to bother reporting that crime, filling out the paperwork and everything else. And by the way, there's no bail. 90% of crimes in New York State are no longer bail eligible. We just had an unbelievable situation in my district up in Cuba. Two people, more than two people, but were operating a gigantic illegal pot farm inside of a warehouse. $4 million worth of marijuana seized. The people were arrested and immediately released in the parents' state. How is that? Yeah. And then they put an ankle monitor on the guy. The guy cuts the ankle monitor, takes off. I just, it's astounding what is no longer considered criminal. And that's the part that really bothers me because, right now, there's some very egregious things that you can do, including violent crimes, that are no longer bail eligible. The whole, it's only for non-violent misdemeanors, is a lie. I can give you countless examples of violent acts where people, including, vehicular manslaughter, they're not bail eligible. So, it's absolutely outrageous, and it needs to be addressed. And this whole twisted social justice idea that somehow we are going to, because we want to coddle the criminals, we're going to ignore the victims and the law enforcement and the law-abiding citizens, it's outrageous.
We
It's
saw that
it's
in
insulting.
Mexico,
Yeah, it's,
when he burnt the diner.
yeah.
That is historical. And what was lost will never be regained.
Well, the bottom line is this: is that you're not, you're never going to convince me that there is some kind of social justice agenda that involves, demonizing law enforcement, letting criminals offend multiple times and get re-released, revolving door justice, letting all these things that are happening right now happen because we're trying to undo some past injustice. Okay, no. Our job in government, number one, is to keep people safe. That is job number one. I don't care if you're Republican, Democrat, mayor, senator, governor. Job number one is to protect the people. Yeah. Okay, yes, ma'am. You want to take the microphone over there?
We are a little over, but
Yeah, come on.
you already told me yes. So.
Yeah, I told you yes. That's okay.
Okay. Had a girlfriend, wanted to marry her from China. Took him 2 years, cost him thousands and thousands of dollars in paperwork. And he had to show how much money in the bank and everything that he could take care of her. But then, people across the border down there, they just walk in and we give them credit cards, housing, food. Okay, the rest of the question is, set them up in New York City in hotels. How long do you keep them there? Is there a rule that it can only be under government?
No, there's no, that's part of the problem. It's indefinite. There's no rule. There's no, the solution, only solution proposed by Governor Hochul has been, let's give them the right to work as long as they're here. Yeah. As long as, quite frankly, they keep passing in the budget. I mean, over the last 2 budget cycles, New York State taxpayers have sent $5.1 billion to New York City for their, in my opinion, self-created migrant crisis. And they have not been any strings attached, none. I would think the first thing you say is, how about no longer being a sanctuary? How about, let's put some conditions on that money. Okay, when we send money to pave a road to a local government, it comes with conditions. Okay, when you're on, well, let me finish. When you're, if you're on public assistance of some kind, if you're getting SNAP benefits, there's only certain things you can spend that money on. But though in New York State, they're getting a rechargeable card of $1,000 with no restrictions. Oh, but they'll have to sign something and say they can only use it for culturally relevant food. Oh, come on. So it's outrageous the lengths to which we have bypassed common sense and the system for this, self-inflicted crisis.
Well, you've got a bunch of freeloaders that are just going to sit around and enjoy.
Well, what you have to understand is that people are living in horrible conditions around the world. Okay, there are a lot of horrible places, and people want to come to the United States to escape those things. However, as sad as that might be, that is not asylum. Okay, asylum is a very specific set of circumstances. It's essentially if you are an enemy of the government in the country that you live in, that if you are seeking asylum because should you remain in your country or go back to your country, your life is at risk, your family's life is at risk because you are an enemy of the state. That is what asylum is for. It is not because I come from a country where crime is high, poverty is high, but those are now being used as reasons. But by the way, all the traffickers, the people that are trafficking these people, they tell them, this is what you have to say when you get there to be qualified for asylum. Okay, I don't buy that. And that is what has created this crisis and was giving the people the excuse to say, oh, no, these people are here legally. No, they're not. Just because the Biden administration came up with some half-assed qualification does not make them, in my opinion, legitimate. So I don't want to end with just half-assed, so can I have something else in the question? So, yeah, one more question. Yeah.
I have a question on the girls' sports.
Yes. Oh, here's a good one.
And, does it make a difference between the body?
Yes. So far, we agree. Yeah. So the question is on biological males competing in girls' sports. So it's going to legalize it is what it's going to do. It's going to say that you cannot, it absolutely says you cannot discriminate against someone based on their gender identity, gender expression, several different gender things. So it literally means that this will, in our New York State Constitution, it will now be legal for someone who identifies as a woman to compete in women's sports, to use women's bathrooms, women's locker rooms, to qualify, to be eligible for women's scholarships. It absolutely will do that. And by the way, these are things that are already happening in New York, but have been able to be blocked because it is not a constitutional right. It is not a protected class. There are very specific protected classes. What Prop 1 will do is it adds 12 new protected classes that are very vague: gender expression, gender identification, pregnancy autonomy, which I can't find a lawyer that can explain what that is. Pregnancy autonomy, pregnancy outcome, all these things. Again, age, national origin. I think there's four. Right now, currently in the Constitution, it's race, creed, religion, and color. Those are the yes. Disability, yes. Thank you, from bat in the back. So those are already protected. And by the way, there are laws that counter that. Mary, yes, I know you're dying to tell me I'm wrong. Go ahead. Title IX will be eliminated in New York State if this is allowed to happen.
Why are you saying that?
Because you're going to give someone a constitutional right to say, I identify as a female, therefore I am going to be qualified to compete in female sports.
So New York State Educational Law 3201C is also going to...
What happens when you change the Constitution is you then invalidate those laws because they are now unconstitutional. The Biden administration is trying to eliminate Title IX. Did you not read that article? Yes, they are. Yes, yes, they are. Absolutely.
I appreciate everybody being here tonight as the Senator. And of course, many of these issues will not be completely resolved tonight. But we appreciate your opinions.
That's okay. But it's great to be home, Fredonia. Thank you very much.